Muslim and Palestinian students at Harvard University filed a federal civil rights complaint yesterday that claims the school failed to protect them from harassment. Wow, things are so weird at Harvard right now that I talked to someone who went there and they didn't even bring it up.
A New York joke. All my friends went to Harvard, and Harvard people always mention that they went to Harvard in the first sentence. You know, when I was at Harvard, it is a very common trait among Harvard grads and even dropouts. The dropouts just say they went to or attended Harvard. Very often the Harvard grads say, well, I graduated from Harvard. Well, I'm Harvard Law. Yeah, so is Barack Obama. Look what happened to him. Well, happy hump day to you. Happy Wednesday. Bad day in the Clinton household, as we all know. Hillary Clinton waking up face down in a pool of her own dried vomit on the linoleum kitchen floor of one of their multi-million-dollar mansions. Secret Service agents standing over here shaking their heads. Tisk, tisk. Oh, what might have been. Well, what has been is a little bit funny. Got to give it that much. We've got a lot of mayhem on the calendar today. The docket is filled with Democrats committing crimes. You know, Democrats love crime. They like shooting people more than almost anything. And there's a lot of that. There's a front page story above the fold in the terrible, awful, corrupt, filthy Washington Post. What a terrible substitute for a newspaper it is that we have. And above the fold, a deadly rampage in the D.C. area. Serial carjacker slays one. Slays. It's a slay. Got to use slays. Critically wounds another before police kill him. And it's the kind of thing that if it had happened, 20, 30 years ago, it'd be such a big deal that they'd make a primetime made-for-TV movie about it. Now it's just another day in any city in America because Democrats love crime. They hate the police. They love crime. Now, this story on the front page above the fold in the Washington Post is about a Democrat who is the son of Democrats. Well, he was the son of Democrats. Thankfully, police shot and killed him. And I'm very grateful for the police. Thank you, police, for locating this criminal. And as he attacked the police with two guns, a gun in each hand, attacking the police like he's Tony Montana. Say hello to my little friend. And the police gunned him down and killed him. So it has a happy ending, And I know how the Democrats love happy endings. It's got a happy ending. But there is something conspicuously absent from this Washington Post piece, and that is the man not fatally shot, who was a Latino man, grew up in Woodbridge, two kids. He was murdered by this savage carjacker. And then another man sitting in his car waiting outside a building on K Street at 9th. K Street, the hall of lobbyists and so on in Washington, D.C. K Street, at 9th, he was waiting for his wife, who's an attorney, to come out of an office building to give her a ride when the Democrat got in the car and shot the man in the head. He's still alive, but clinging to life. The man that was shot in the head in his car waiting for his wife was a Trump administration official, but the Washington Post left that out. That's not in the Washington Post story. I went looking online to see if the Washington Post had perhaps updated the story, and I couldn't find any update on Al Gore's amazing internet either, because it's not a newspaper. It is just a Democrat propaganda rag masquerading as a newspaper. They have the format of a newspaper. It looks like a newspaper, but it's not. Democracy died there long ago. It's not journalism. So we've got this amazing story in a Trump administration official, shot in the head and nearly killed, clinging to life, in intensive care in a hospital in Washington. His wife came out shortly after he was shot. He was sprawled out on the ground with one foot inside the passenger door, blood gushing from the head, his hand quivering, according to a witness, when his wife came out screaming because, Democrats are everywhere. They're on the loose, and they're dangerous, and they're violent, and they love crime, and they hate the police. It's an amazing political party we have. At what point do we just press RICO charges against every registered Democrat? Completely insane. It should be banned as a political party. Extraordinary. And the Congress really needs to take over the District of Columbia. Take it back. No more home rule. Time to end home rule. It's been proven that these people, that's what I'm going to say, these people don't know how to run a city in a civilized fashion. And the nation's capital, the United States of America, needs to be taken out of the hands of the corrupt Democrats who defund the police and then, love criminals. Speaking of which, in New York City, a gang of illegal aliens attacked two NYPD officers, two New York police officers, and beat them, kicking them in the head, got them on the ground. A mob of men, they're all military-aged men. They were not with women or children. They attacked the police, and 9 of them assaulted two New York police officers. 4 of them were arrested and brought in for their violent gang assault as illegal aliens in the country illegally as aliens. And they attacked the NYPD officers, beating and kicking them, got the 2 NYPD on the ground, stomping them, beating them. And the police arrested 4 of them, brought them into the station, and the Democrats essentially immediately released them without bail, with no bail at all. Hey, get back on the street, illegal. No handcuffs, no jail cell, no held without bail, like January 6th, anything like that. No calling in ICE to get them deported immediately and just airdropped over the mountains of Ecuador, push them out the ramp on the back of the plane. None of that. No, released immediately back onto the streets of New York without bail. New York is too dangerous to go to. Don't go to New York. Washington, D.C. is too dangerous to go to. Don't come to Washington, D.C. My friend Larry O'Connor was telling a story on his excellent radio broadcast just a short time ago, preceding my radio broadcast, and telling a story of a friend of his, who's a friend of mine also, came in with his best girl to Washington, D.C. to see a show, like a Broadway show, live theater. And after getting out of the live theater, sun's going down. Hey, you want to go to a restaurant for dinner? Hell no, let's get out of the city as fast as we can. It's too dangerous to be in the nation's capital of the United States of America because of Democrats. 100% because of Democrats. It's the Democrat Party. In the meantime, the Democrats are looking to put pro-life protesters in prison for 11 years because they went to an abortion clinic, sat down, and sang hymns. And that's such a terrible crime. Now that the Justice Department under Joe Biden and the corrupt Merrick Garland, thank God he didn't make it to the Supreme Court. Can you imagine? He'd be corrupt for life there. What a horror show. And they want to put these pro-life activists in prison for more than a decade. And it's just amazing what these lunatic prosecutors are saying. Something is not peaceful if laws are broken, says the prosecutor. Pretty amazing stuff. This woman, Amanda Klopf, the appropriately named Klopf, K-L-O-P-F, which I think might be a blood condition. Amanda Klopf, the assistant U.S. attorney, trying to jail pro-life protesters who were more peaceful than any Democrat is at lunch on any given day. And she says, something is not peaceful if laws are broken. Well, dig up Martin Luther King and put the cuffs on him, because peaceful protests are actually protected under the Constitution. You mental case. This woman, she'd be disbarred, probably put in leg shackles and dragged away, put in prison without bail, without attorneys, like January 6th. So that is amazing stuff. Yeah, 10 years for that. Anybody recall the 3 days of riots outside the White House and torching St. John's Church and attacking the Reagan Center and injuring 160 to 180 police officers? Democrats, all this violence for 3 days, forcing the evacuation of the president and the first family to the underground nuclear bunker. Nobody was sentenced to anything. Nobody was sentenced to a day in jail, much less 30 days, much less 11 years. But a peaceful pro-life protest by this fascist administration will get you more than a decade in prison because you're pro-life. And I've got audio of what they did when they were at the abortion clinic chanting, because they're pro-life. They believe in the sanctity of life. They might even be Christian people, and that's another strike against them with the fascists of the American left in the 21st century. Amazing stuff, I got to tell you. And also a a Christian in Iowa who is a veteran of the United States military. He went in, you may recall the Democrats went in and put up a satanic statue in the Iowa state capitol because they love Satan but hate Jesus. Just don't try to pray on a football field if you're a high school football coach. They'll fight you all the way to the Supreme Court to stop you from doing that. But then they'll put up a statue of their satanic horned beast who they worship, the Satanic Temple. And they put it up in the Iowa state capitol because it's their goal to be as offensive as possible and to serve their master, that is Satan. And the veteran went in and knocked over the satanic statue, and its head broke off. Now, the Democrats, they have Democrats in Iowa now, are charging him with a hate crime. And he could do years in prison for knocking over the Satanic Temple statue that they erected in the Iowa state capitol. Pro-life people going to prison, the anti-Satan people going to prison, but the carjackers and, well, I share the carjacking numbers were even worse than I thought in Washington, D.C. last year. It's absolutely extraordinary how many crimes the Democrats, they love crimes. Oh, today is also Mailbag Day. Today's Mailbag Day as well. But I did a little math today, and it turns out that we had so many carjackings, 959 carjackings. I thought it was only 930 something. 959 carjackings in Washington, D.C. last year, our nation's capital. We are 61 square miles of dirt, all right, plus a little bit of water on the rivers. 61 square miles. That's 15.7 carjackings per square mile last year. 15, every single filthy one of them perpetrated by a Democrat. Not a single MAGA hat-wearing Republican voter committed a single carjacking. I know because 60 Minutes would do 5 pieces on it if there were one such example. 15, almost 16 carjackings per square mile last year in Washington, D.C. Honestly, we're like Mogadishu at this point. You might be safer in Mogadishu. Just amazing. And also the Congressman Jim Jordan, yesterday, talking about Joe Biden's open borders policies. And it's the fundamental transformation of America. We better learn Spanish because the Democrats have designs on the country, and they don't like the country. They live and breathe disdain for the freest, fairest country in the history of the world because they are essentially authoritarian and or totalitarian. But Jim Jordan last night saying, look, by the time Joe Biden leaves after 4 years, we may have 12 million illegal aliens across our border. 12 million. Now, I pointed this out before, but Jim Jordan used the number 12 million. 12 million immigrants. That's the number of immigrants that came in through Ellis Island the entire time Ellis Island was open between 1892 and 1954. That's 62 years Ellis Island was open. A total of 12 million legal immigrants came through Ellis Island. They were checked for criminal history, for their gang tattoos, for diseases and viruses, health checks before they were released into the population. 12 million legal aliens through Ellis Island over the course of 62 years from 1892 to 1954. We may have 12 million illegal aliens, all MS-13 and Hamas members, cross our border illegally under Joe Biden because they are not on our side. Not on our side. Boy, I'm telling you. And in the meantime, speaking of Mogadishu, we've got a Somali congresswoman who is ferociously anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Western. And she spent 5 years in a Kenyan refugee camp before coming to the United States, and she still spits on us. We should send her back. And in fact, Governor Ron DeSantis has suggested exactly that. That's coming up as well. Kamala Harris did a fluff job interview with a Spanish-language television network and embarrassed herself once again. Denver is being overwhelmed by the tsunami of illegal aliens bankrupting their healthcare system. The Democrat Party is here to destroy because they're not liberals, they're the left. And when do you hear this carjacking story out of D.C.? Hey, it's Chris Plant. Excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. I'm going to get to the crime and mayhem and the Trayon White, D.C. City Council member who believes that the Jews control the weather. No 60-minute story on him. Gang of bootlicks. Crazy stuff today. Let's and mailbag today. Let's take but you know there are a few jokes to be found in all of it. Let's go to and Sonia Sotomayor. The job is too overwhelming for her. It's the workload is too much for Sonia Sotomayor. It's a DEI hire on fire. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Angela calling from Montclair, Virginia. Angela, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling because how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm talking about the situation that the Democrats put us in. They have blocked every constitutional avenue by violating the Constitution. And so, how do we get out of this without a civil war? I can almost bet $1 to a dozen donuts that there's somehow or another making it where all of these illegals will be able to participate in the next presidential election because they're looking at every way possible that they can to ensure that President Trump is not reelected. And there's a reason why the borders are open. All the NGOs, organizations that I believed in, like Doctors Without Borders, Red Cross, all of them are involved in this, being paid millions of dollars to facilitate it. And what do we supposed to do? All the crime, they just let all these illegals go and they beat up police officers. How do we get out of this? I just don't see a way out. And it's almost like they want us to become so frustrated that we do begin to just take matters in our own hand and look at the border. It's almost it definitely is a constitutional crisis down there. So how do we get out of this without a civil war? Whenever our so-called elected officials, leaders, NGOs, people from all over the world are participating in undermining our country. How do we get out of this?
That is the big question, Angela. It honestly is. And, you know, we have elections. Our elections aren't serving the American people very well because one of our two major parties, the Democrat Party, has betrayed us. Our president has betrayed us. The Democrat Party is not on our side. Yeah, you might think that the violent mob of criminal Democrats attacking the White House for 3 days, torching the Church of the Presidents and the only building in Lafayette Park, injuring 160 to 180 police officers. You think somebody might do a day in jail for that, but you'd be wrong. They brought M80s, that's an eighth of a stick of dynamite, to hurl at the police again and again. Pallets of frozen water bottles to hurl at the police. They brought tools with which to perpetrate arson, and not a single prison sentence for that. But if you're a pro-life activist, then you may get, I believe it's 10 and a half years in prison that they're going for chanting that you're pro-life, because the radical extremist prosecutor, the assistant U.S. attorney Amanda Klopf, said something is not peaceful if laws are broken. She is mentally impaired. She's a dwarf, and a legal, a mental, and intellectual dwarf. She should be removed from office. Speaking of which, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the first vote took place very early this morning, past midnight last night, apparently, in the House of Representatives, to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas because he has betrayed his country, assuming that the United States is his country. I'm not 100% sure with these guys. Just extraordinary stuff. I'm telling you, now let me get to the D.C. madness, because this is what I woke up to today. And the Washington Post, again, front page above the fold, their lead story is Gaza captive deal on table. So yeah, get back to me when you've done something. How many months has it been, and what has the White House done? What has the U.S. government done to free American hostages being held by Hamas, a radical Islamic terrorist organization in the Gaza where they're being raped and tortured? I'm not aware that they've done anything, to tell you the truth. They haven't lifted a finger. They don't care about human life, at least not American lives. All would go free in a 6-week pause. Sure, and the terrorists will hold them to the last day of that 6-week period, and if they were released at all, and I wouldn't bank on that. And then it's back to terrorism, because they're genocidal anti-Semites like so many Democrats in the United States today. Hamas weighs plan after tentative Israeli go-ahead. I think daisy cutters ought to be called in. Daisy cutters are 20,000-pound bombs that, clear an area the size of a city block. That might be the solution. Oh, we're not getting our hostages back? Oh, okay. Boom. Boom goes Gaza. Boom the West Bank. But across from that story, on the front page above the fold, the Washington Post, a deadly rampage in D.C. area. Serial carjacker slays one, critically wounds another, before police kill him. And they have 4 typists on this story. Not worth mentioning, because they're corrupt. Police fatally shot a man early Tuesday who they believe committed or tried to commit at least 4 carjackings in D.C. and suburban Maryland, and also opened fire on 2 occupied police vehicles in separate locations in a span of less than 10 hours, leaving one motorist dead of a gunshot wound and another critically injured, according to law enforcement officers. Even for a region racked by an epidemic of carjackings, in the past year, the violence, starting early Monday evening in the District of Columbia, was a stunning rampage. There were 5 reported attacks in all, including 3 carjackings, 1 attempted carjacking, 1 shooting that police said might have been an additional carjacking attempt. The mayhem ended a few hours before dawn on Tuesday in Prince George's County. Just don't call it PG County, you racist, where 2 police officers with the New Carrollton Police Department fatally shot the suspect after he confronted them with 2 guns, authorities said. Now, the Democrats are assailing the police here for being the good guys, because the Democrats are the bad guys. Police identified the motorist who was killed as 35-year-old Alberto Vasquez Jr. Efforts to reach his family were not successful. The first attack occurred shortly before 6 p.m. Monday outside of an office building on K Street Northwest near Mount Vernon Square. A man sitting in a vehicle was targeted, apparently while waiting to pick up his wife at her workplace. According to police and a witness, he was shot in the head in what police said might have been a carjacking attempt and was hospitalized in critical condition. Now, the Washington Post doesn't mention it because they're not journalists, but the man that they're referring to here was a Trump administration official and a father of 3, and he was picking up his wife, who came out to find her husband sprawled out on the street with blood gushing from his head and his hand twitching, and a woman screaming over him as the wife came out screaming. And the Washington Post doesn't mention, oh yeah, he's a Trump administration official named Mike Gill, left critically wounded after being shot in the head in a D.C. Carjacking attempt. Now, let me say, this is at 9th Street and K Street. K Street, the canyon of lobbyists, of course, in Washington, D.C. He was not a lobbyist. And the person that shot him was a Democrat, and the son of Democrats as well. Not that he necessarily knows both of his parents, but they're Democrats. I'll go ahead and bet the farm on that. Now, Mike Gill was shot at 9th and K. I know that's not to make it all about me, but I'm at 14th and K every day. I do a lot of different things, and I'm at 14th and K every day. Then a man was shot on Connecticut Avenue, just north of DuPont Circle, where I transit twice a day, as I did yesterday, and that was at rush hour. I was driving on Connecticut Avenue, north of DuPont Circle, at rush hour yesterday when someone else was shot. I was at 14th and K at about the time that the man was shot at 9th and K, and the city is not safe. Don't come to Washington. Don't visit Washington. Don't do business in Washington. Don't bring school trips to Washington. Washington is not safe. Washington needs to be taken away from the Democrat Party. And even Congress couldn't do a worse job of running our nation's capital. It's time that the Congress ends home rule. Home rule must end. Take the district back. Put it in the hands of the federal government as it should be. It was not a good idea at the time. We now know that it was a bad idea. Let's end home rule in Washington, D.C. This must end. Just extraordinary. And it's all because the Democrat Party, because, Democrats run it. And Democrats, I think, are they all criminals, Michael, or are they all mentally ill? Yeah, they say this criminal on the rampage in Washington, D.C., that he might be suffering. Well, he's dead now, thankfully. And honestly, I want to thank the police officers of the New Carrollton Police Department who stopped this mad dog criminal on his murderous rampage, even though the Democrat Party is in bed with the criminals. Absolutely disgraceful stuff. But let me get to this. Former Trump official Mike Gill this headline is stupid, left critically ill. No, critically wounded, not critically ill. He doesn't have the flu or the Wuhan Red Death out of Wuhan, communist China. After being shot in D.C. carjacking incident, internet says fire the mayor and the city council. We've got the city council member, Trayon White, the guy who believes that the Rothschild family and Jews control the weather and make it snow so they can take over big cities. That's what the Washington, D.C., America's national capital, D.C. city council member says.
Man, it just started snowing out of nowhere this morning, man. Y'all better pay attention to this climate control, man. This climate manipulation. And D.C. keep talking about we're a resilient city. And that's a model based off the Rothschilds controlling the climate to create natural disasters they can pay for it and own the cities, man. Be careful.
That's right. He's on to him. He's got the Jews' number, doesn't he? That's Trayon White. He was reelected after that. He was invited to go to the Holocaust Museum after that. He went and then walked out halfway through his tour, and he might as well spit on the people that were walking him through. D.C. must end. D.C. must be taken out of the hands of the local. I'm a local resident, and I have been for decades. And it's time that the federal government take D.C. back from the corrupt idiot government that we have that has driven it into the side of a mountain. So the former Trump administration official Mike Gill is fighting for his life in critical condition after becoming a victim of a brutal carjacking on K Street in northwest Washington, D.C. The incident occurring around 5:45. I was a couple of blocks from there, right in that time frame, unfolded tragically, leaving another victim dead as the assailant embarked on a violent spree across the city and Maryland. Now, Gill, a dedicated public servant, married father of 3, was collecting his wife, an education lawyer, when tragedy struck. Witnesses on the scene reported after being struck in the head by the assailant's gunfire, Gill managed to exit his vehicle but collapsed shortly afterward. Yolanda Douglas, an eyewitness, described the chaotic scene, talking to the radical extremists at the Washington Post, who never used Gill's name in their lengthy story on the crime spree, told the Washington Post that Gill was wearing a dress shirt and a sweater, sprawled on the pavement with one foot still inside the passenger side of the car. His right hand was twitching and blood was pooled around his head. She's very well spoken and described the scene very well. The witness described how his wife, Gil's wife, ran toward her husband and grabbed his hand, asking him what happened, but received no response. The assailant, who has yet to be publicly identified, continued his rampage, attempting multiple carjackings in both D.C. and Maryland. One of the victims during his violent spree was identified as 35-year-old Alberto Vasquez, who tragically lost his life. He also a father of two, according to other reports. Gil, a seasoned professional, served as chief operating officer of the Commodity Future Trading Commission during the Donald Trump presidency. Spokesman for Gil confirmed the incident, saying, "We can confirm that Mike Gil was the victim of a shooting on the 900 block of K Street Northwest on Monday evening and is in critical condition. Out of respect for the family, no more at this time." So now this is absolute madness, of course. And I've been talking about the carjackings and the craziness. Now, this article says the carjacking epidemic in Washington, D.C. has witnessed a dramatic rise, with 959 incidents reported in 2023 alone. Again, we are 61 square miles of dirt in Washington, D.C. That means that's 15.7 carjackings per square mile last year. That's pretty extraordinary. Most of every square mile is covered by houses and buildings and dirt and not roads. This is an extremely dangerous city because so many Democrats raise criminals. And they're all illegal guns, by the way. But 959 carjacking incidents in 2023 alone. That's truly extraordinary. Under Democrat Mayor Muriel Bowser, carjackings have nearly doubled. Just extraordinary. This past weekend, there was an incident in one neighborhood. 60 cars broken into in a 72-hour period. No big deal. Pay no attention to that. And honestly, the district needs to be taken away from home rule Democrats with Trayon White, who thinks the Rothschilds make it snow so they can buy it and then take over the city because they're Jews, something like that, to Muriel Bowser, who is obviously criminally incompetent. It's time for Congress to take the district back. Home rule must end. I say this as a, 34-year resident of Washington, D.C., not of Maryland or Virginia, but of Washington, D.C. the entire time. And honestly, people on Twitter, on X, are saying the same thing. Congress needs to take conservatorship of D.C., fire the mayor. Enough of this lawlessness. It's absolutely true. Call out the stinking National Guard. Take the city away from the Democrats. Was this a hit or normal D.C. violence that the Mayor Bowser ignores? I believe it's, just the usual D.C. Democrat violence crime because, Democrats. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Your Democrat Party. And, we've got audio on this, too. And the police say, that he might have been mentally ill before he attacked police with two guns and was thankfully shot to death, thankfully by the New Carrollton police.
The information that we do have is that potentially there was a mental health concerns with this individual, and he went on this spree. So this is not a typical carjacking or crime spree. It does appear there's mental health concerns and overtones related to this. Yeah, there are mental health concerns. Well, like most of these carjacking criminals with the guns are perfectly well-adjusted, normal people. Is that what I'm supposed to? We got to take a break here, but got more on the amazing stuff. And this is just another day in paradise, And it's true in Chicago and Baltimore and New York, where I was talking to someone yesterday, said he used to go to New York all the time with his wife. Now they just throw you in front of the subway trains for fun and stand there like nothing happened. In Washington, D.C., always drive defensively. When you come to a stoplight, leave enough space between you and the car in front of you to veer and run over the carjackers, because you're taking your life into your own hands. The Wild West was safe and sane compared to Democrat-run cities in America today. Our borders are open. Illegal alien mobs attacking NYPD officers. And then when they're arrested, immediately released without bail. The Democrat Party needs to be declared a criminal organization.
Talk about mental illness. It's an epidemic. We call it the Democrat Party.
Crime is at all-time high. You know, you can't make illegal legal. You know, no matter what you look, no matter how you do it, you can't make illegal legal.
Even the Daily Mail in Great Britain is reporting on all the carjackings in Washington, D.C. and the mayhem. A friend of mine informs me from Virginia that Mike Gill's family is saying that he was killed in this attack. He's on life support, but the way the family is describing it is that he was murdered. And good thing the as-yet unidentified Democrat criminal was shot and killed by the New Carrollton police, because that's speedy justice, and that's good. But there will be more today. There have already been, what is it, so far this year? And we're 31 days into the year. And I think we've had 46 carjackings so far in 2024. Man, oh man, I'm telling you. Well, they just added another one. So now I guess we're at 47 because the ticker keeps on running. Yeah, 31 days into the year. It's well over one a day. And that's your Democrat Party. All right, let's wait. We got very little time, but it's Jason in Kensington. Jason, very little time, but you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Yeah, the police have been cut back. Like in Montgomery County, we're about 150 to 200 short of police, and they're going to cut more back because they've also changed the liability. Each policeman now is liable for any sort of personal injuries that these criminals may incur during a crime. So now they're sort of sitting back and saying, listen, I'm not going to risk my retirement or my, any sort of legal hassles by going after these guys. So not only are they cutting back on numbers, but they're also cutting back on their ability to do the job. So these politicians, they do not give a rodent's rectum about your welfare.
Yeah, that is quite clearly the case, isn't it, Jason? And Jason came here from Australia, you might have detected, and is a great and proud American and a great and proud immigrant to the United States of America. And I've spoken to Jason before, and we've met. We all ought to be appalled by the state of the country. If we had a news media, they'd be reporting this, but we really don't. What do you hear about New York coming up?